Hello and welcome to Kayla's World, Preptober edition. I'm Kayla Canoe, author, YouTuber, gamer, and aerialist, and today's video is my first patron-only video, and it is going to be all about building magic systems. So if you guys haven't already checked out my previous Preptober videos, they are linked below for you guys. The last video I did was on world building, so you may want to check that one out first, because today we are going to be focusing on building magic systems, which is kind of like a subset of world building. But yeah, so without further ado, we are just going to go ahead and jump right into it. And kind of like I did with my other videos, or for my other parts of Preptober, I created a beautiful little kind of fall themed printable for you guys, and this is accessible. You should be able to get it below for you guys as my patrons as a thank you. But I'm gonna kind of go through this and kind of walk through how you guys can utilize this form, and basically all of the things that you want to think about when it comes to building magic systems for your fantasy worlds. So yeah, at the top, I have a couple little boxes here. This one box, this little orange box here, is mostly just going to be different types of magic, just as a way to give you guys ideas. So if you're using this form and you want certain types of magic, you can just check mark them if you want to like keep that for yourself. But really it's just to get the juices flowing, as in like what different types of magic there are. Similar to that, I have a list of the ways that magic can be used. And that would be the verbal magic or spoken magic, which basically is like speaking. Like if you speak a command in Latin and then magic happens, that would be like verbal magic. Written magic or spells, which similarly is something that you would be writing down, and now that is your spell. Maybe you like write it and burn it, and that makes the magic happen. That would just be written magic. Magical objects or enchantments are another type, and that would be like an object that holds the magic, and anyone who uses that object can use that magic. Well, maybe not anyone, but the magic is held within the object or the item. So maybe it's like a special stone that can give you magical abilities, or like an amulet or a magic wand or anything that you want it to be. It's an object that's enchanted and has magic within it. Next on my list is innate magic, or magic that comes from within. So for this principle, it's kind of like you're born with it, and you just have this internal ability to be able to do magic or use magic, which I actually use in my fantasy world. Most of the beings are born with magic, and they're born with like different levels of magic, but that's kind of how innate magic works. And I think superheroes, like if you're a big superhero fan, that would kind of be classified as innate magic, because like Superman can just fly. Like he didn't really do anything to be able to do that. He was born that way. So that's kind of the innate magic spectrum. And then along that lines, I have psychic magic or thought magic, which basically means you think it and it happens. And there's all kinds of different psychic magic as well that you can kind of get into there. But that's probably going to be more of an innate ability, or maybe it is something that people can learn, but it is kind of more internalized in that sense. So yeah, those are kind of different ways that magic can be used. You can also think of your own ways for magic to be used. That's just kind of a pretty standard list. And then as far as types of magic, there's like elemental magics, necromancy, divination, which is like magic through the gods, conjuration, which is like conjuring things from nothing, alteration, which is like altering appearances, telekinesis, aura reading. There's all kinds of things. I have just a small list for you guys. If you want more ideas of different types of magic, feel free to comment, and I will share as much as I can, because I love magic and magic types. But yeah, we are going to get into the questions that you should be asking yourself for building your magic system for your world, which for the sake of this video, we're going to say that you already kind of have preliminary world-ish building, or maybe you're starting with magic, which I know that I kind of did that, so that is also possible. The first thing you want to know is, what can your magic do? And so that's kind of going into that whole selecting ways magic can be used, what magic can be used, what kind of magic exists in your world, what can it do? Can you do anything? Can you do like a small number of things? Can you make something out of nothing? Can you just alter things? Can you control things? What can it do? Write it down. You're going to want to know. That's important. The next question you're going to ask is, where does your magic come from? What is the origins of magic in your world? So basically, you're going to give a backstory to your magic system. For me, I actually tied my magic into my religious system for my fantasy world, which basically means that magic was gifted to the world by the gods, and it made some massive changes occur, which I guess is kind of like a Big Bang Theory almost, but for magic. Anyway, so you're going to want to know that, because that's going to be important for you, whether it becomes relevant, like whether you actually like write it in the novel or not. You may or may not, but you want to know where it comes from, because that's kind of going to give you that backbone of how things work in your world and such. So know your backstory. Next, you're going to want to know who can use magic, who has access to it. Is it something that anyone can use if they learn it? Is it something that only a select few can use because they're born with it? How accessible is it? Because that's important to know, and that's going to affect the whole economy of your world, based off of who can use it. But yeah. Next, along those lines, is going to be, what are the limitations of your magic? So this is going to be you giving kind of restrictions to it, or not, if you want it to be like all powerful. But generally, you're going to want limitations on what the magic can do. So let's say maybe with magic you can create something out of nothing. So let's say maybe with magic I can make water appear, right? But maybe I can only make X amount of water appear. Like maybe there's a limit on how much water I can make appear. Maybe that has to do with my ability of, I can only create as much water as I could hold. So like if my body's not strong enough to hold X amount of pounds of water, then I can't summon that. Or maybe you can summon like a whole like huge body of water. But you just want to know what your limitations are on that for your magic, because generally they're going to have some sort of balance or some sort of limit as to what people can do, and you want to know that. Along those lines, are there consequences for using magic, or do your magic users need a recovery time to be able to use magic again? In general, I recommend giving some sort of consequences for using magic, or some sort of limitation, because all-powerful beings that can do anything just aren't quite as interesting. It's almost like giving that like character flaw, but to your magic system. So like, yes, I can grow a giant tree from nothing, but now it feels like I ran 3 miles and I need to catch my breath and I need to sit down for a minute and like recover before I can then use magic again. So in my world, that is very much the case, where if they use a certain amount of their innate magical abilities, they basically get tired, they get run down, they kind of like have a stamina bar that drains as they use magic. So depending on how much magic they use and how intense it is will depend like how fast that like stamina bar drains. And to some of that, it does surface as like physical consequences, as in if someone's using more magic than they can handle, it actually starts damaging their physical body. So I think in like one scene in my book, like my character's arm is like splitting open and he like starts bleeding out because he's tapping into more power than he should be. But yeah, so that's just kind of example of consequences or recovery time needed for your people when they use magic. And it could be like a corruption thing too, like maybe someone picks up the magical object and they use it, and now they're like haunted by these thoughts and bad things, you know, things like that. Anyway, so the next thing you're going to want to do, I recommend writing down a description of what it feels like to use magic, and you're probably going to want to make this description for each type of magic that you have because it might be different. But writing how it feels is important because you're probably going to be writing that the most in your book when it comes to magic being used, and people want to know how it feels, and for the sake of being able to be consistent, you want to write that down. So for my world, I have like a list of what magic feels like. It's actually on my window right there behind the camera. So like for fire magic, because it's innate and it's coming from within, anyone who uses it, they can like feel a like burning, tingling sensation like running through their veins. Depending on how much they use, it could end up being more like a white, hot, like, whoo, like I just jumped into a volcano kind of feeling. But that's just one example of how that magic feels. Obviously, water magic feels completely different. But write that stuff down, think about it, think about what you want it to be, and put it on your paper. Kind of along the same lines there, you want to describe what your magic looks like if it looks like anything. So in my world, there's like an aura about magic. So like for dark magic, it kind of looks like almost like black electrical crackling lightning or tendrils that are like kind of surrounding the person as they use it, and maybe it like actually creates like an energy ball that can then be directed at a person. So that has a very visual look. People can see that. They can see, hey, that person is using dark magic. Your magic may or may not be like that. It may be something where they speak magical words and something appears, but as that thing appears, maybe that looks like something, and maybe it doesn't, and people don't know when they're using magic, so people are like, what just happened? Did someone use magic? But whatever it looks like, write it down. You're going to want to know that. In addition to that, you want to know how your magic impacts your world and its cultures. So if magic is only available to a small group of people, there's a good chance that that small group of people might be the people in charge of everything because they have all the power. It could also be that those people are like hidden, like a hidden cult, and nobody knows about them because it's a big secret. Or they could be like a group of people that are being hunted down because other people covet their magic or are afraid of their magic and want to kill them all, like Salem witch trial style. So those are just kind of examples of how magic in your world is then affecting your culture. And along those same lines, you want to know what the average person in your world knows about magic and whether it's common or not. So regardless of how many people can or can't use it, is it common knowledge? If so, that kind of can lead to the different ways it impacts your culture of either they're being worshipped as gods or hunted down as fiends because they're the devil. Or maybe people just don't care that much, or if everyone has access to magic or a lot of people have access to magic, then like maybe it's being used on like a daily basis. And if people know about it, they know about it. If they don't know about it, then that could be one of those things of like, where would someone then learn about it? And how secretive is it, and how much do they know? So you want to know all of that. You want to write all of that down. Because that's going to be important to how your people are interacting in your world when it comes to your magic. Next, you're going to want to describe magic symbols if you have magic symbols. You may not have magic symbols, or possibly people of your world have forgotten what their magic symbols are or what they look like. But if you're going to have magic symbols, I recommend drawing them, writing them down, describing them with words, and like having that somewhere, because if you have a specific symbol and it's important and it represents your magic, you're going to want to know what it looks like, and you're going to want to know how to describe it. So that way, as you're writing your novel, someone sees it and you're like, bam, this is what it looks like. I already know what it looks like because I took time to think about what it looks like. And just like have a list of those for whatever important magic symbols you have or that you want to have. I have like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 magic symbols that I had drawn, that I've described, that I have for my world. So just write that down. It's gonna be a lifesaver for you while you're writing. And then the next thing I have here on my list is to describe a magic object. And basically it's going to be any magic object. If you have magical objects, you may not, but if you have any kind of magical objects, you want to just maybe describe a couple of them, especially if it's something that's going to be relevant to your story. And along that lines, how do people know it's magical? Does your magical object have an aura about it? Does it have some sort of energy that magical people can sense coming from it? Or is it one of those things where like people don't know it's magical unless they know what they're looking for? Like maybe it's like an ancient object and it just, it looks like a clock, it smells like a clock. Most people would think it's a clock, but then a magic user touches it and it's like, oh, I can feel the power inside of it. But that's just kind of practice of writing that down so that way you know what magic looks like in your world when it's in an object. And then the last thing that I have on my list is, how do the people of your world feel about magic? Do they love magic? Is magic great? Are they like, whatever, magic's just a normal part of society, so like some people take advantage of it, some people don't. Some people are like, yep, I'm opening the blinds with my magic because it's just, it's part of life. We all have it, we all deal with it. Or is it like one of those things where like power hungry and corruption, and people hate it and people despise it and people are like, if you do magic, you're the devil and we're gonna kill you, kind of thing. You want to know how your people feel, and this could be regional. Depending on how big your world is, there may be some areas of the world that are like, yes, we worship the all-powerful magic user, and then other parts of the world that are like, what is magic? I've never heard of this thing. And then they see it and they think it's the devil because they're scared of it. But yeah, so you just want to think about that. You want to associate that to your different cultures, different tribes, if you have different tribes, different species, if you have different species. But yeah, so that's kind of my list. I know it was a lot of things to kind of go through, but there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to magic, because it's definitely like a big part of your fantasy world, and it can definitely alter your cultures and your races, and maybe you have magical races, and that's just like a whole other big story to go into. I think I previously did a video on how to create fantasy races. If you guys want to check that out, I will link that below for you guys. But that is what I have for you guys today. If you have any questions about magic systems or creating magic systems, or are in need of some help, feel free to comment below, and I will get back to you guys. I love talking about magic. It makes me very happy. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys for being patrons. It makes me really happy to have you guys, and yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed your time here in Kayla's world.